Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and this one's a little bit longer than usual. In this video though, I will be removing the BMW N55 engine out of my 335 E92 coupe. I recommend checking out my previous videos on this car as they explain a lot of what is actually going on and why I'm removing the engine. I do skip over some of the parts in this video, but most of the big stuff is included. I hope you enjoy and give this video a like. As I'm not a BMW mechanic and I do this just for fun, I did run into a few issues along the way. Some of these were really easy to solve but required tools that I didn't have, and some required some thinking even though I did have the right tools. So I've learned a lot along the way, and I think this is one of the best ways to get familiar with your project car. I started this project with some safety in mind, as I'd be crawling underneath the car. So the very first thing I did was disconnect the battery, that way I didn't chance it with the ECU, catch something in fire, or just short something out in general. After putting the car in jack stands, I got busy with removing the interior air filter and both lower and upper sections of the housing that holds it in place. I then removed the trailing links, and with just a couple of bolts, proceeded to remove the intake filter housing, the cowl panel cover, and the clear air pipe. Once all of these were removed, I had easy access to the intake manifold that's held in by just 7 nuts and a screw. Before I pulled it out, I made sure to unplug all of the connectors on the ECU and move all of the wires out of the way. Then it just pulls out. Don't forget to disconnect the vacuum line that's at the bottom as well, just so you don't break it when you do pull it out. At this point, this car has been treating me very nicely, and I was very excited to keep wrenching on it. I had music playing in the background, and it was just me and the car in the garage. It was great. When you take the intake manifold out, you have access to so many things. There's your starter, super easy access to the alternator. I believe that's your high pressure fuel pump. You can also do the walnut shell blasting. There's all of that access. You can probably even take a look at the valves on cylinder 1 where our issue is. You can definitely see how much fuel or an oil is in it compared to the other ones. We have taken that out. I mean, it's a little bit of a pain, but it definitely opens up a lot of access. If you take a look, I've only done maybe a couple hours worth of work, but we're getting somewhere. My next mission was to drain it of as many liquids as possible. I drained the oil off camera and then got to work on the coolant system. To get better access, I removed the fan cowl with just one bolt and got to draining the coolant from the bottom hose. And once it all drained out, I took the expansion tank off as well. As I kept removing parts from the engine, I would disconnect and remove coolant lines along the way. So far, it has been basic mechanical wrenching, and I've been enjoying it with no problems inside. Now that I've had plenty of space, I removed the serpentine belt, which allowed me to remove the alternator, as well as loosen the AC compressor. At the same time, I removed the oil pipes, making sure to catch any excess oil spills. So I'm in the process of removing the starter, and it's very difficult to get into those bolts in the back that connect the transmission to the engine. So what I've had to do is actually, as you can see over there, get some of those really small sockets, the E-Torques, and one of those swivel heads. Otherwise, it was impossible to get into. Here is what my normal one looks like. This is what I normally use, but as you can see, they're quite long, so I had to actually purchase these. Luckily, they're like $8 on Amazon. They came in 4 hours, so that's pretty nice. But I can finally get in there to remove that bolt. I actually got the CV joint type of socket that will be arriving tomorrow or in a couple of days, so I should be able to get those transmission bolts all the way in the back over there, hopefully. So I can, actually remove the engine part from the transmission. So far, it's been going pretty well. I'm gonna try to make it as short as possible for you guys in the video, so it's not a 40-minute video. But, obviously there's a lot of things that I have been working on. The fan cowl has been removed. The oil lines that go from here to over there have been removed. all of the ducting, a lot of the coolant lines as well. So those lines have been removed. Obviously the coolant has been drained, as well as the oil. So there's been a lot of happening. Yeah, let's keep going. All right, now that I have removed that second bolt in the back, it should just come out. You're gonna have to wiggle it a little bit and it pops off. At this point, things have still been going pretty smoothly, so I decided to tackle one of the harder parts of the engine removal. The removal of the axles or the output shafts. If your car is rear-wheel drive only, consider yourself lucky since you won't have to be dealing with this royal pain in the butt. Now, undoing the bolts on the track rod end, on the wishbone, the trailing link, and the anti-roll bar was a piece of cake compared to trying to knock out the shaft out of the differential. And there it goes. Did you see that pop? I hope you did. Basically, it is out now. So we're just gonna go to the side of the car again and pull it out. Don't be like me and try to follow BMW's recommendations and just use the screwdriver like I do in the video here to pop them out. It's definitely worth the cost of a seal. It's so much easier. And we are out. Next, I decided to tackle the removal of the catalytic converter. It looked very easy in the manual, so I figured it would take me maybe an hour or so. As surprise to no one, I ran into some issues. The biggest issue I had was that there was no way I could separate the exhaust from the catalytic converter. I tried taking the bolt off with a regular socket, I put some heat on it, plenty of WD-40, but at the end I just had to cut it off with a grinder and break off the ones I couldn't reach with an air hammer gun just to separate the two pieces. It was such a pain, it took me a couple hours at least. I then spent the next 20 minutes getting the bolts on the engine support arm, and engine mount was out with the support arm included. I was in the clear, or so I thought. After removing the clamp, the cat was supposed to just kind of drop out and come out, but it never did. I eventually gave up on it and removed the engine, leaving it in place. So I guess that's one way to do it. After removing the engine mount and the support arm, I had lots of extra space, and with all of that extra space around the transmission, I was able to take the rest of the bolts out, holding it to the engine. I can't say that they were easy, but using the CV joint extension and the short sockets, I was able to get them all out in no time at all. Maybe it took half an hour. I thought the engine is now ready to be separated from the transmission, but wait, there was more. Of course there was more. At this point, I don't really see anything that's attached to the car anymore. The engine and the transmission have separated, so I'm just trying to wiggle it out. Of course, it's not as easy as it looks. This is kind of in the way, but that's flexible, so I can move that. And hopefully I should be able to disconnect the AC compressor. That way I don't have to drain or call somebody in to drain the refrigerant. I checked in the bottom, didn't seem like anything is holding the engine back anymore. So at the moment, I believe it's just the shaft that goes into the transmission. So I just got to be careful not to break anything there, and we should be good to go. I mean, obviously it's going to take a little bit, but we're getting there. We're getting there. After struggling for a bit, I had to do some research and found that since it's an automatic, the torque converter would be too large to come out with the transmission, even if I did separate them, which mine just wouldn't. So I decided to remove the 6 converter bolts, and while I was under the car removing those bolts, I saw that the propeller shaft was still attached to the differential. So I removed the 4 bolts and dropped the shaft down. I'm glad that I caught that one before I, before I did too much damage to the differential or the transmission. Then I used the pry bar to put some tension between the engine and the bell housing, hoping it would make it easier to separate. Nothing was really stopping me now. I was on a mission to get that engine out, and I did. We're hung up just on a couple of things. I'm so excited. I think there's a couple lines in here that I'm going through, but I'm just slowly pushing them out of the way as I'm pulling the engine up. We are kind of close and very comfortable and intimate with that part of the engine. Not really sure what that is. Not the engine, this part. So I have to push it back a little bit. But we finally disconnected, fully disconnected from the transmission. So I'm so excited. This was a pain in the butt to get those two to come apart. But wow, we're so close. We're so close. Just waiting for a couple things to drain off. That way I don't make a mess. But hey, half of the engine's out. All right, guys, we're getting closer and closer. As you can see, we are slightly getting caught on here, but I might just have to remove this in the process. I'm not sure. Or I technically do have about an inch that I can go back. So we'll see. We'll see what we're gonna do. But I mean, the engine's pretty much out. How exciting is this? Woohoo! And man, this is the all-wheel drive engine with the differential and everything. And I didn't have to disconnect any of the AC components. Wow, I'm so happy so far. Let's just keep hoping that it comes out all good and we get to work on this beast. Well, guys, check this out. I mean, come on, this engine is out, all done in my garage. I mean, it's a huge mess in here with a lot of parts everywhere, but the engine is out. I mean, this was way more work than I expected, especially compared to the Z4. I mean, on the Z4, it was, I don't know, maybe a couple of weekends and the engine was out. This one, I've been working on this for, I don't know, like 3 weekends and a few days after work. But man, this engine's out. A lot of it does have to do with the all-wheel drive system. I mean, there's so many extra components and things to get out of the way. But man, this is out. Like, the engine is out. Everything is ready to go. As I mentioned earlier, the AC system, the compressor is here. It wasn't, I didn't have to draw the refrigerant out or anything like that. So super happy about that. Didn't have to deal with, you know, the whole refrigerant stuff. But man, this thing is huge and it's heavy too. Like, even just pulling the crane a little bit, it's really heavy, this thing. So yeah, lots coming up. I'm gonna be rebuilding this engine, or at the very least trying to rebuild it. And the amazing thing is that I still don't see where the oil was coming from. I mean, the engine looks fine. I mean, okay, I see where the problem is. I definitely see where the problem is now. I did not see that before. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, that's what's been causing all the oil leakage. So we definitely know that cylinder 1, you know, was destroyed and pretty much there's no piston there. Well, this is the other end of it. So we'll see. I mean, this is probably rebuildable, but I'm gonna take it apart, see what happened, and see if it's financially sensible to actually rebuild it, or you know, just get a new engine and put a new one back in. But we'll see. So I really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to comment. Let me know what you think about this whole endeavor that I'm in. Like the video, since this took so much effort to do, and subscribe to the channel to see this engine being rebuilt or a new engine put back in, or at the very least to see what's inside cylinder number 1. See you guys in the next one.